So I'm walking down 20th Street in Saskatoon on a cold winter's day to my first ever spoken word poetry slam. And I'm thinking to myself, what is a poetry slam? What is a poetry slam? Is that some sort of big city thing? Some sort of Big Apple thing? Some sort of Brooklyn to Bronx kind of thing? That's definitely not something we would be hearing down by these bridges, man. You know, when I'm thinking about spoken word poetry, I'm thinking about smooth walking, jive talking turkeys, not like these prairie chicken dances that we're all used to. Oh no. You see, this isn't Fat Albert and his super friends. This isn't that poet Miguel Pinero in his slick brown leather jacket snapping his fingers for you. And this definitely isn't Sammy Davis Jr. featured in Carnegie Hall, tapping his fingers out for you, tapping his toes out for you. No, and this definitely isn't the Sweat Hogs and Horseshack and Vinnie Barbarino welcoming back Mr. Cotter. Mr. Cotter, welcome back. You see, this here is Bridge City, not Brick City. Our streets get empty and cold and crisp nights, not endless and forever. This is the snow globe known as Toontown. Give it a shake. Take a good long look, because out here, we can see all the way to the sea of stars, where we can walk across these bridges underneath rainbows that touch north and south together, where we can holler out our warriors' crows, our matoi, makwas, where our urban smudges are sometimes heard in the crisp nights. You know, it's not about these back alley melodies, these schooly wah wah wah. I'd much rather hear my brothers on hand drums singing sweet traditional songs like, darling, don't cry when I leave to USA. I'll take you home if you like. When I go back to Canada, hey-ya, 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 hey-yo. You see, it's about all of these beautiful, alphabetically correct people who are meandering from east to west without prejudice, with much love and respect. Saskatoon residents, all practicing their own poetry thing. And you see, these are the few of the things that I thought about when I was walking down that cold night down 20th Street, man. I grew up in Regina, and this next piece that I'm going to do, for some weird reason, it reminds me of Regina, because when I was a kid, like, I was really close to my brother. Sorry, me and my brother were really close in age, and every day we were having like fist fights, right? And we'd even be in the schoolyards, and we'd get into fights in the schoolyards, right? So we grew up kind of tough here in Regina, and I don't know, it was all right. And this next piece that I'm going to do has a little bit of social justice to it, so I'll just get into it. So sometimes these boys end up fighting in schoolyards. They might be outnumbered 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. Sometimes they might be called redskin. And I heard just recently that they're talking about retiring Chief Wahoo out in Cleveland, which gives me room to exercise this next piece. And all across this nation, they're talking about let's stop anti-bullying campaigns, and time again they're talking about let's stop all these suicides and let's stop all this pain. But did anyone ever stop and think about this nation's doubled suicide rates amongst the First Nations youth? Let's stop for a moment and think about who we're cheering for. By that, what I mean is we can't carry on anymore with these masquerades where we don hair braids and feathers and fox war bonnets and whatever. Let's stop and take a moment to switch up these war paints, because we should be fostering the inadequacy of the Indigenous identity, and professional organizations are going to tell you that they do it out of strength, courage, pride, and respect. And most of all, those professional organizations are going to tell you that they do it out of honor. So, could I start dancing around up on this stage like some sort of a brave, and you guys could all start whooping it up and hollering? Maybe I'd feel a little less invisible, right? Perhaps I should put on that wide-faced grin like that red-skinned Cleveland Indian, right? Perhaps then I could feel the warmth from a crowd of drunken sports fans. No. No, I can't do that. You see, at one point as a kid, on my way to the schoolyard, I remember thinking to myself if poverty would ever end. And I imagine things. I imagine one day that my home could one day become a stadium for triumph instead of just another rental dump. And on my way to that schoolyard, just then I stopped and I see my friend walk by with this Cleveland Indians jacket on. And I wondered if poverty would ever end, right? And I wish that one day that a big man could, I wish that a hero would step forward and stop the big man from using my skin color as a logo, and perhaps reward all of these poor little Indian kids with all of those billions, and perhaps reward all of these poor little Indian kids with all of those cool jackets, toques, hats, boots, bedspreads, bar stools, tall stools, posters, flags, jerseys, you name it, and most of all of that awesome sports equipment. And at one point I thought that would have been the right thing to do. So come on now, everybody. Let's open our eyes a little bit. So come on now, NFL with your Washington Redskins. Come on now, Major League Baseball with your Atlanta Braves and your fake Indians. Don't think I didn't see you drop that headdress either, NBA, with your Golden State Warriors. And Chicago Blackhawks, you already had your NHL champions. Now, everybody, let's open our eyes to a country that glorified the attempted extermination of its original inhabitants, romanticized Pocahontas, stupefied a nation, and made the whole United Nations blind to the 1 little, 2 little, 3 little, 4 little Indian reservations. And they call that honor amongst unprofessional organizations, please. Because sometimes people like to forget that we use the R word like some sort of a badge or a logo, and we share it together in rallies with tomahawk chops and war cries, but somehow we forget that the N word depicts another race very negatively. And I am trying to speak very delicately, because sometimes little boys end up walking home from schoolyards with tears rolling down dirty little red-skinned cheeks because their mothers told them to stand up for what they believed in. Like it's not cool to play cowboys and Indians in the schoolyards of the Bedford Road Redmen. I got one more social justice piece. Well, I got a few of them actually. A lot of my pieces are social justice, so I got a little bit of, I spit a little bit of fire when I get on the mic. I also, I do storytelling, and one of the stories that I'm known for telling in Saskatoon is the story of Miss Vicini. And I love to give back to my community, so I tell the story to as many people as I can. And I'm not going to tell the story tonight because it's really long, and I don't want to put anyone to sleep here tonight. So, with that story, it kind of, I kind of like to say that it found me, right? And I tell the story over and over again. And it's gotten to the point that I've seen this story made into a play. I've seen the story told by other people. I've seen people do research on the story. I was brought into an essay about the story as a consultant. And now it's one of my spoken word pieces. So I'm just going to share that with you. A Saskatchewan son ends up being lost on these prairies. He was adopted by a bison, and only to return to man, to return to the bison, to spill the blood of the bison. Miss Destiny, I want you to remember that. You see, I am not a ward of the state. Tonight it's poetry, and tonight I want to protest a little bit that I'm not a child, I'm not crazy, I'm not mentally challenged in any way, although I do feel like a prisoner in this great province of mine. And I do know how to read between the lines, and they're saying that the last of the Indian fight is gone and the West has been won, with an explosion way back in 1966, to be exact. Miss Vicini, I want you to remember that. Another likely sounding word, misrepresentation. Now that's a word that's commonly thrown around political arenas, and I hear that they use that word to create all kinds of new taxes, right? And they're raising the cost of living, and they're raising the cost of gas prices, and they're lowering that, and they're cutting funding dollars from the arts, and they're cutting funding dollars from First Nations organizations, and they're telling us that we can't even protest or strike. They're converting public health care systems into privatizations, and they're locking the door, and they're omnibus pushing. And trust me, I'm not going to get on that bus. But they're just plain embarrassing the crap out of our system. And these waiting lists get longer and longer, and these sick people won't stop getting sick, and the natives won't stop wanting to go to school. So where's all the snaps on that, Petro? Woo! See? And they're coming up with all these grandiose plans, these huge plans, like let's build bigger jails, let's create new labor recruitment strategies. But forget all about that for a moment, because it's this one tiny clause on the treaty that deems me a ward of the state because I'm Aboriginal. Ladies and gentlemen, this genocide will not be televised, and we got the red man, so unusual, right? From Sâkêwêwak to mascots, from oranges to apples, straight from Indian residential schools, preferential. And my motion told me once never to speak Indian if I wanted to survive. And you see, we have these political puppets, they're dancing and they're trying to resurrect a Texan snake eye and eye for an eye mentality on this Canadian constitutional menu, on this starve the most style, meaning the apartheid. You see, brothers and sisters, we got to consider right now the political consciousness of the Canadian Indigenous awake and doing well. And I'm not going to be remaining idle no more. Now let's rewind that all back for a second now, because I want to get back to Mysticity. You see, I found a huge rock. Words had captured it. And eternally it bothers me that a sacred shrine of the Indian kind, petrified buffalo, Aboriginal artifacts, a symbol of stone and the symbol of unity, and between you and me, it was destroyed so we cannot see what exactly freedom means to me. So perhaps out there in the spirit world, my ancestors and your ancestors, we're not abusing the land, and we're not putting each other away on little pieces of the land, and we're not taking away each other's cultures and beliefs, and we're not taking away each other's tongues and children, and we're most certainly not dynamiting each other's cultural landmarks and siphoning the Saskatchewan over it and calling it a lake. Lake Diefenbaker to be exact. You see, you will not find that in his storybooks, because we carry our stories orally. I work with a lot of people in the community of Saskatoon, and I never forget my roots. Like, I grew up in this city, and I love Regina, and like, this is like my home to me. I spent a lot of time in my youth here in the city, and I write a lot of my poetry comes from my experiences I've had in the city. Now, they brought me into a Cree bilingual school in Saskatoon known as St. Francis, and it's the first of its kind. And they brought me in to share with the students spoken word poetry, teaching kids how to speak up for themselves and teaching kids to be proud of themselves. And for me, that was a really awesome experience, and I wanted to give something back, so I wrote this piece for these kids, and I'm just going to start by introducing a little bit more. When I was a kid growing up here in Regina, I didn't know anyone in my communities that spoke, Cree, or I didn't even know what the word Sâkêwêwak meant, I had no idea until the summers when I would go up north to visit my father, who wasn't there, but I had to live with my kukum. And I remember the first week, every summer, my kukum would say to me in the best English that she could possibly say is, "This is the only time that I'm going to speak English to you." And then it broke. And the rest of the summer we spent in her trailer, learning, listening to her, and I had no idea what I was eating half the time. It was like all wild meats and stuff. But I was learning. I didn't know I was learning. It was very difficult. At first I put up a fuss, but by the end of the summer I was kind of interjecting myself on their conversations, because I remember one particular conversation they were having is they were talking about these little kids that were coming from a northern community to the Sundance, and they were saying that these kids didn't even know how to speak English. And I was a kid, and they thought that I wasn't listening. I was like, "What?" And I stopped them and I interjected. I was like, "When we get there, you introduce me to these kids, because I want to play with them." For me, that was so odd. I never met anyone that didn't know how to speak English and be native, So that was really something for me. So I wrote this with that memory in mind. Your words are powerful, and my words are sad. Your words are dancing to the new notes in my head. My words are like trees of autumn days, like leaves that leave me in so many different ways, while your words are trickling out like spring runoff. Your words are bringing new meaning in life, while my words have been sustaining me all of these long winter nights. Your words are ushering a summertime heat and are vibrant and new, while mine sit still, reflecting the cold days and gray hues. And I imagine your future an open land untouched by man, while I harvest my own and I try my best to understand. I envision a day when we could all speak your two languages. Perhaps like ancestral prophecies, we will come to know the way of the native poet. Naturally speaking, naturally living, naturally sharing metaphors and similes on hand drums near urban street corners, a place where natives own homes on side streets, by native-owned businesses on main streets, and poetry is taught in native schools on native tongues, and we don't even ever have to think about teaching about social injustice, poverty, indigenous identity, Indian residential schools, treaties 2, 3, 4, or 6, or any of the other treaties that I may have missed, because we'd all be beyond prejudice and hate. We'd be all too busy trying on our latest traditional trends and fashions all up and down the block. Ribbon shirts to ribbon skirts to ribbon shirts. And I imagine a place where we could trade in our protein bars for pemmican, where we could pick wild berries in our communities, where diabetes doesn't exist any longer thanks to our native doctors and medicine keepers. A place where our children could run in the streets free of gangs and crime. A place where our young men could let out their hair like the warriors of the past, only in suits and ties. And a place where we value our elders. Instead of them begging on change on corners and suffering from homelessness, we house them in the best and place them on the top of everything. And if a child only speaks their native language, they would be regarded as royalty on these prairies. And I'm referring to you, young native poets. I am honored to have been your teacher of poetry, and I am excited to listen to you read out loud your wonderful words. It gives me hope, and it gives me many reasons to be proud. Your words are valuable like an infant's first cries, and somehow I hope they help me to realize that poetry is eternal. And I'm glad to know that you can go on practicing your new poetry in 2 languages as I only know 1. You see, my belly is nearly full and yours has yet to taste this beautiful world. So let your spoken words fancy dance near my inner eardrum and swift to my heartbeat. And let your spoken words lead you out into that open land. And don't be afraid, young native poets, because this is where I make my stand, proud, with pride. Woo! So on my way to spoken word poetry slam, I was outside and I was thrown off my game. I was having a conversation and some guy comes up to us and he's like, "Oh, what's this powwow all about?" And I was like, "Oh." And it threw me off for the whole night. So I ended up writing this piece for that guy that kind of pissed me off a little bit in front of the poetry thing. But here it goes. This is called A Few Things That Are Right, A Few Things That Are Not Right, followed by something right. First of all, I just want it to be known that I did not bury any hatchet, nor would I ever bring any hatchet to any kind of fight. So the term, "let's bury the hatchet," bears no significance to me. Do not use the phrase Indian giver, because 90% of my people did not survive the arrival of the Puritans. Although we tried to help, Indian giver does no justice to the remaining 10%. Do not use the phrase "off of the reservation," because believe it or not, right now at this very point, I am off of the reservation. And so were many of my ancestors. ancestors who were dragged off to prisons or Indian residential schools with Indian agent notes in hands, and those buggers probably missed a memo. Do not use the word powwow to describe your groupings, your get-togethers, your crowds and confusions. This poetry slam is not a powwow. The word is negative doublespeak, and from the New England Puritans, the office and duty of the powwow is to be exercised principally in calling upon the devil and curing the disease of the sick and the wounded. But in the memory of a young, proud First Nations, it might look something like this. And this is right. Scattered trucks and cars circulated like old bulls and cows lying down for the night under looping and swirling treetops, swaying to the sounds of day calling night. And we got enormous men pounding in one time, fiercely breathing in time, chest out, hollering pride songs, beating dead skins together. Me and my brother chasing each other out of vehicles and neighboring tents and tripping over firewood and crashing down and manure and dung and teasing and laughing, and so much of the telling of this and that. And all my relations are together, cooking, eating, playing, and being together, and making plans to return, and plans how to return, and plans in between smudges, and the skies are in soldier boy blues, and the evening soaks up the deep velvets of the night and glistening into murky blackness. And I cried to belong to them. I wanted to show them my power dance. It was traditional, but it was not their traditional. It was my own traditional. I was just so little out there on that reservation, and I was afraid. And I was afraid that, I could be lost amongst all the people that were out there. And I could be lost on the bottom of moccasins or boots. And so through the tree foliage, I gather my strength, and they whisper out for me to return. They whisper out to me through the vines and leaves. Gasp, others wish for me to return, to dance, so I run to it passionately. I'm running through the wild, and I'm passing through the trees, and I pass over the rivers, and I pass through the coulees, and I'm jumping over rocks, and I'm returning to my Saskatchewan sunrise, so I could be everywhere at once. While I laugh at the powwow. Hookah. This is for Brad. And for Red.
Yeah. Here tonight. Featured here tonight. Got you this or? No.
Way back, before the hunger took over, when I had focus and I could see straight, the monstering began on a full moon, on some street, behind some garbage cans. Me viciously thought cold, dark, monster thoughts. No. And what remains of me, proud, blue, vibrant coat with hints of glimmering gland, is a wretched, grotesque mange of blue and purple matted fur which hides these scars and tribulations. No. And I crept in the back door with me sinister ways, and me kicked off me heavy feet. And how do we tell about this? Me went into the pantry and me hand went into the jar, and out came my hand and threw it in my gnarly smile, and my eyes go violently wild. No. And how do we explain the guilt of what me doing? What do we tell your father about the monstering? What do we tell your brother about the monstering? And what do we tell me little litter of monsters about the monstrosities? No. And as quick as you could say jaw, oh boy, me couldn't help myself. Me love cookies. And later on that night, the cold crept in and, ooh, the cookies. C is for cookie, that's good enough for me. C is for cookie, that's good enough for me. Cookies, start with C. Later on that night, me sitting on the floor, and me see them peering deep into me. And they they see me and I see them, and all they say is, yeah, yup. A little bit of BBC Sesame Street. You don't know who that is, I got a brand new poem that I wrote for my brother. Like I've gone with, I have a basketball team back in Saskatoon, and I like to look out for my friends and stuff. And I see how hard it is for them to, try to maintain lives for their families, and they do the best that they could. And their troubles are all the same, like from what I see and from what I experienced too. I just want to share this piece for them. For my brothers who are claiming no addresses, please hear this address. He claims no address and he slips between the urban cracks of non-existence. He's pulling every other job he could from A to Z for his lover and his babies, and he strolls from place to place, gently moving at his own pace. With a smile on his face, he's searching for grace. He's just needing that one empathetic embrace. Walking across cityscapes and steel toes and dirty work clothes, you see it takes a certain effort to smile on cold, cloudy, work-long days. In the long run, he'll simply tell you that it pays. And he's got no mailbox to open letters from debt collectors, and it seems that society has abandoned him with feelings of aloneness, and he claims no address in his downtown head-down strolls, empty hands and pockets he strolls. He'll sit and watch his kids play as his lover brings him another's plate. Oh, this non-existent Saskatchewan state. He prays in sweet-scented smudges as the sun climbs and red downtown sun rises. He misses the reservations, and his tears fall to heaven as he laces his boots at the doorway, gently shutting for babies are sleeping and cradled in his non-existent state. And he carries himself proud, and he'll deny himself cab rides and woolen socks just so his babies could have all that much. And you see, it's been 10 years in his non-existent state, and his babies are still smiling while his lover brings him another plate. And he's all too often overlooked for promotion, but he keeps on walking because one day someone will recognize him in his non-existent state. Maybe someone will see him walking in his downtrodden shoes for all the stuff that he could do, even as it seems that the welfare of others has dictated his fate. He was never late to work in his non-existent state. Thank you.